Stand on the west bank of the Nile at Thebes today, and the silence is almost total. Beat 1 complete. More than 90 million people now live along this river's banks, most in Cairo sprawl 200 miles north. Beat 2 complete. But rewind 3,000 years, and you would have found mud brick suburbs stretching for miles, the air thick with yeast and smoke, children running barefoot through alleys still wet from the flood. Beat 3 complete. Bread. Beer. Flood. Harvest. Beat 4 complete. Using cutting-edge AI reconstruction, we are about to walk you through a full day and night in the life of ordinary Egyptians, from the moment the sun broke over the eastern cliffs to the oil lamps guttering in workers' quarters after dark. Beat 5 complete. The day began before dawn. In the workers' village of Deir el-Medina, home to the men who carved the royal tombs, mud brick houses stood in tight rows, each about 70 square meters, for rooms deep. No windows faced the street. Light and air came from high clear-story openings and a rear courtyard. The first sound each morning was the grinding of grain. Women knelt at saddle querns, pushing a small stone back and forth across a larger one, reducing emmer wheat and barley to coarse flour. It took an hour to grind enough for the day's bread. The flour was gritty. Everyone's teeth wore down to the pulp by middle age, abscessed and aching. Skeletal remains from every period show the same pattern: severe dental attrition, infection, early tooth loss. Most families slept on the roof in summer, on woven reed mats. In winter, they moved indoors, onto low mud brick platforms covered with linen sheets if they could afford them, or simply more mats. Pillows were carved wooden headrests, curved to cradle the neck. Children slept beside parents until marriage. Infant mortality ran above 30% in the first year. If a child survived to age 5, he or she might live into the 40s or 50s, though few reached 60. The house had no kitchen in the modern sense. Cooking happened in the courtyard, over a beehive-shaped clay oven. Bread dough, leavened with wild yeast from yesterday's beer, was slapped onto the oven's inner wall or baked in conical molds. The woman of the house managed this work, often with the help of an older daughter or a servant if the family was prosperous. Men left early for the tombs or the fields, carrying flatbread and onions in a linen bag, a clay jug of beer slung over one shoulder. Bread and beer were the pillars of the Egyptian diet, mentioned together in every offering formula, every prayer for the dead. Emmer wheat became bread. Barley became beer. The process for beer was simple but labor-intensive. Barley was lightly baked into loaves, crumbled into water, left to ferment in large pottery vats. The result was thick, nutritious, mildly alcoholic, drunk through a reed straw to filter out the sediment. Workers at Deir el-Medina received monthly rations, for sacks of emmer, 1.5 sacks of barley. Vegetables supplemented the staples. Onions, garlic, lettuce, cucumbers, lentils, chickpeas. Figs, dates, and palm fruit provided sugar. The rich ate meat, goose, duck, beef, mutton, but for most families, meat appeared only at festivals. Fish from the Nile was common, though priests were forbidden to eat it, and it never appeared in temple offerings. Dietary taboos varied by region and temple. The workday was long. In the royal necropolis, gangs of labourers worked 10-day weeks, then rested for 2 days. They lived in barracks near the Valley of the Kings during their shifts, returning to Deir el-Medina on rest days. Foremen recorded attendance on ostraca, limestone flakes or pottery sherds used as scrap paper. Absences were noted with reasons: brewing beer, wrapping a body, quarreling with a wife, being stung by a scorpion. The records are oddly intimate. In the fields, the rhythm was dictated by the Nile's flood. The inundation arrived in July, covering the floodplain under a meter or more of water. When it receded in October, farmers plowed the soft mud with wooden plows pulled by cattle, sowed seed by hand, then waited. Harvest came in March and April. The grain was cut with wooden sickles edged with flint blades, threshed by driving cattle over it, winnowed by tossing it into the wind. Scribes measured the yield. Tax collectors took their share, typically 10% or more, stored in state granaries. What remained fed the family for the year, if the flood had been good. Egyptian cities were loud, crowded, pungent. Streets were narrow, unpaved, dusty in the dry season, muddy after rain. Garbage piled in corners. Pigs and dogs roamed freely, scavenging. There was no centralized sanitation. Waste went into pits behind houses or was simply dumped outside the walls. In workers' quarters, houses shared walls, and privacy was minimal. Voices carried. Disputes were frequent and public. Court records from Deir el-Medina mention accusations of theft, adultery, strikes over unpaid rations. The scribe Amenikti accused a woman named Heria of stealing a tool. She swore an oath before the local oracle, and the matter was dropped, though the tension clearly lingered in later documents. The city center was dominated by temples. At Thebes, the temple of Amun at Karnak was the largest religious structure in the ancient world, a stone forest of columns, courtyards, pylons. It was not a place of congregational worship. Ordinary people could not enter the inner sanctuaries. The god lived in a dark shrine, attended by priests who washed, dressed, and fed the statue every day. The public encountered the god only during festivals, when the statue was carried on a portable bark in procession through the streets. The Opit festival, held annually in the second month of the inundation, brought Amun from Karnak to Luxor temple, a journey of 2 miles along an avenue lined with sphinxes. The god traveled by river barge, accompanied by musicians, dancers, soldiers. The king walked beside the bark, validating his divine right to rule. The people watched, cheered, received redistributed offerings of bread and beer. Markets operated daily in open courtyards or along the river bank. There was no coinage. Trade was conducted by barter, values measured in deben, a unit of weight equal to 91 grams of copper. A goat might be worth 1 deben. A pair of sandals, 2 deben. A fine linen tunic, 5. Prices were recorded in contracts, even though no physical money changed hands. A merchant might accept grain, oil, or cloth as payment for a tool. Professional bakers, brewers, launderers, potters, carpenters worked in dedicated quarters. Potters shaped clay on slow wheels, fired vessels in open kilns. Weavers worked vertical looms in shaded courtyards, producing linen from flax grown in the delta. Linen quality varied widely. Coarse weaves for workers. Sheer, almost transparent weaves for the elite. A single high-quality tunic could take weeks to produce and was a prized possession, mentioned by name in wills. Religion was woven into every action, every transaction. Before eating, a family might pour a libation of water or beer for the ancestors. Before a journey, a prayer to Atha or Biz for protection. Before a birth, amulets and incantations invoking Taweret, the hippo goddess. Magic and religion were not separate categories. Spells were practical tools, as real as a hoe or a knife. A headache might be treated with a poultice of herbs and a recitation from the medical papyri, which mixed prescriptions with spells against demons. A scorpion sting required both a physical remedy and an invocation of Isis, who had healed her son Horus from poison. The boundary between doctor and magician was blurry at best. Household gods were intensely personal. Biz, a bandaleg dwarf with a lion's mane, protected women in childbirth and warded off nightmares. His image appeared on beds, on mirrors, on amulets tucked into children's clothing. Taweret, the pregnant hippo, stood guard over the home. Small shrines in the corner of a room held clay figurines, offerings of flowers or food. People prayed directly to these gods, without priestly intermediaries. Letters to the dead, written on pottery bowls and left at tombs, asked deceased relatives to intercede in disputes, cure illnesses, or stop haunting the living. One letter from a widower to his dead wife accused her of tormenting him from beyond the grave, demanded to know what he had done to deserve it. The great state gods, Amun, Ra, Ptah, Osiris, were more distant, accessed through temple ritual and the king's mediation. Ordinary people participated in their cults during festivals. The beautiful Feast of the Valley, held annually at Thebes, saw families cross the Nile to the necropolis, camping overnight at ancestral tombs, sharing meals with the dead. Torches burned through the night. Music, dancing, drinking. The living and the dead together, the boundary permeable. The calendar was governed by these cycles. 3 seasons of 4 months each: Akhet, the inundation; Taweret, the growing season; Shimu, the harvest. Festivals marked the transitions, tied to the agricultural year and the movements of Sirius, the star whose heliacal rising in mid-July announced the flood's arrival. New Year's Day, the first day of Akhet, was a time of renewal, offerings, new appointments. The king granted honors, scribes opened fresh papyri, debts were sometimes forgiven. Marriage was informal, a matter of a man and a woman setting up a household together. There was no religious ceremony, no state license. Love poetry from the New Kingdom is startlingly direct, even erotic. A young woman sings, "My heart thought of my love of you when only half my hair was braided." Another declares, "I am yours like this field planted with flowers and sweet-smelling herbs." The poems circulated as entertainment at banquets, but they also reflect real affection. Monogamy was the norm, though men of means sometimes took secondary wives or concubines. A woman retained control of property she brought into the marriage. Divorce was possible, initiated by either party, and required a division of assets. A contract from the Ptolemaic period specifies that if the husband divorces his wife without cause, he forfeits a large portion of his wealth to her. Women could own land, conduct business, testify in court. Their legal status was not equal to men's, but it was stronger than in many neighboring cultures. Athens, by comparison, confined citizen women to the household and denied them independent legal standing. Childbirth was the greatest danger a woman faced. Maternal mortality was high. Amulets, spells, and midwives attended every birth, but infection and hemorrhage were common. If a woman survived childbirth repeatedly, she might bear 6 or 7 children, though half would likely die before adulthood. Children were valued, essential to family continuity and care of aging parents. Sons inherited the bulk of an estate, but daughters received shares. Funerary texts include prayers that the deceased might enjoy his children and grandchildren forever. Family tombs at Deir el-Medina sometimes held 3 generations. Grandparents, parents, children buried together in small rock-cut chambers, surrounded by painted scenes of daily life, fishing, farming, banquets. The afterlife was imagined as a better version of this life. The same work, the same pleasures, but no famine, no pain, no tax collectors. Illness was understood through both physical and spiritual lenses. The Edwin Smith Papyrus, a surgical text from around 1600 BCE, describes 48 cases of trauma, head wounds, fractures, dislocations, with rational diagnoses and treatments, sutures, splints, bandages. The language is clinical, almost modern. But the Ebers Papyrus, a compendium of medical and magical spells from the same period, prescribes donkey dung mixed with honey for skin lesions, or recitations to expel the poison sent by an angry ghost. Both approaches coexisted. A broken arm was set with wood and linen. A fever of unknown origin required a spell and an amulet. Parasites were endemic. Schistosomiasis, caused by flatworms in the Nile's irrigation canals, infected millions. The worms burrowed into the bladder and intestines, causing chronic pain, blood in urine, organ damage. Mummies show calcified eggs in tissue. Malaria was common in the Delta. Tuberculosis, pneumonia, and dysentery killed across all classes. Life expectancy at birth hovered around 30 years, dragged down by high infant mortality. Those who survived childhood could expect to reach their 40s or 50s. A few lived longer. Ramses II died at 90, though his mummy shows severe arthritis and abscessed teeth. Death required elaborate preparation if one could afford it. The body was washed, eviscerated, dried in natron salt for 40 days, wrapped in linen, placed in a coffin. The process cost months of an average worker's income. Poorer families made do with simpler burials, the body wrapped in a mat, placed in a shallow grave in the desert sand, which naturally desiccated and preserved it. The goal was the same, to preserve the body so the soul could return to it, to provide food and drink through offerings or painted images, to ensure the deceased could speak the correct spells and pass the judgment of Osiris. Stand in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo today, and you can see their faces. The mummies of kings and commoners, linen-wrapped, skin darkened and drawn tight. The bread molds they used. The sandals they wore. The letters they wrote to the dead, asking for help, for peace, for one more harvest. Ancient Egypt was not a civilization frozen in monumental stone. It was the smell of yeast rising in a courtyard oven. The sound of children playing in the street. The exhaustion of 10-day shifts in the tombs, the relief of rest days, the hope that the flood would come on time and the barley would be thick. They worked. They loved. They prayed. They died. And for 3,000 years, the rhythm held. A culture that refused to vanish.